Are there any questions? We have a few minutes here. I think he already, oh, a question? Yes.
Exactly what were the hatcheries doing that made the salmon decrease in the river?
Well, let me repeat the question. What were the hatcheries doing that made the salmon decrease in the rivers?
Well, let's start with mixed stock fisheries. In trying to harvest the hatchery fish to their maximum, wild fish were over-harvested. And that basically, doing that, one example is the Oregon coastal coho, which because they harvested at really high rates, which they believed the hatchery stocks could take, they way over-harvested the wild stocks and set up the conditions that led to the listing of the Oregon coastal coho on the endangered species list. The next thing is that we traded a lot of habitat for hatcheries. A lot of the dams on the main stem Columbia River were built because people were told we can have fish and dams too. We can have salmon and dams too, and that hatcheries would provide the salmon. The Canadians had the same. They had proposals to build main stem dams in the Fraser River. They sent a team of biologists down to the Columbia, looked at what was going on there. They went back and they said, no, you cannot have both. You have to choose. And they chose not to build main stem dams in the Fraser and keep the salmon, although they've got other problems right now. And there are other habitat problems. We were negligent in protecting the streams from poor logging practices, or the grazing practices where cattle grazing occurred, because we thought we could make up for the loss of that habitat through the use of hatcheries. So those were probably the earliest and some really strong effects that hatcheries had. Part of the stream clearance that went on in the 60s and 70s, where they had crews of people going in and pulling logs and everything out of the streams, came from the idea that hatchery fish needed a clean highway to get from the hatchery to the sea. The hatchery mentality led to that stream clearance, and in the late 70s we discovered that we were actually causing the problem to get bigger in our streams. Then, so those are part of the hatchery problem. Then, over the last 30 years, a whole new array of problems have been investigated, and you've probably heard a lot about the fact that when fish are brought into the hatchery, they become domesticated, and then they don't survive very well when they try to spawn and live in the natural environment. And if they spawn with a wild fish, then the wild fish doesn't survive as well. So there's this whole area of genetic domestication problems that hatcheries have been causing all along, but we just in probably the last 30 or 40 years have begun to realize what the magnitude of that problem might be. There's competition that can occur between hatchery fish and wild fish on the streams. Oregon at one time had a program to help resolve the problem of over-harvesting wild fish in order to harvest all the hatchery fish by planting hatchery fish into hatchery juveniles, surplus juveniles, back into the streams that were being underseeded because we over-harvested the wild stock. those hatchery fish, because they spawned 2 months earlier than the wild fish, that we had shifted their time of spawning, were bigger. And so they basically chased the wild fish off the streams. But then those hatchery fish, when they came back, there were fewer wild fish coming back. The hatchery fish didn't survive very well. So we found that by trying to solve the problem of overharvest by planting more hatchery fish in the streams, we not only didn't increase the abundance of coho salmon, we decreased it. There were fewer fish coming back as a result of our stocking. So that gives you a taste of, there's probably, I could probably talk about the problems of hatcheries for the rest of the day, but that gives you a feeling for the problems that were created by them.
Is that just about the Elwha? Is that, yeah, how is that progressing?
I served on the panel that reviewed the recovery plan, and the Elwha removing the dams on the Elwha is a very good progressive idea, and having the program that was funded by the federal government focus on ecosystem restoration was another very good progressive idea. And the plan says right in the beginning that habitat was one of the most important parts of the program, but then the plan only devotes 8 pages out of 168 to habitat. Most of the discussion of that plan had to do with the operation of the brand new hatchery that was built. Salmon have been recolonizing vacant habitat for probably 30 to 40 million years. And I guess we figured that they didn't have it down right yet. So they needed the help of this tool that has all of the problems that we just explained. And they call that an ecosystem restoration. So,
The hatchery was part of the restoration.
pardon?
The hatchery was part of that restoration project.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. It was built as part of the restoration program.